Salvete mihi nomen est Stella at hoc est Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 216 for January MMXXII. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics right to the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, it's been a long time since I've had this guy on here, and the first time on Zoom. But there's a reason why I wanted him on this episode, which we'll, of course, talk about. But this is my podcasting brother, my big bro. And it's Tom Panarese. Welcome back.
Hi. This is weird. This is my first time on video, yet I spent the better part of an entire year doing this from this very seat in front of an average of 20 teenagers per hour. And this is still very weird.
Yeah. I was commenting before we started recording that your background like sums you up to a T just with all of the images and everything. I'm like, yeah, you can just look at that and be like, yeah, that's Tom Panarese right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Credit to Luke Dobb for the Teen Titans print. I bought it off of him at the Baltimore Comic-Con. So
it's got a Luke Dobb feel about it.
It is a Luke Dobb print. So and then below that, of course, is the Justice League by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Praise be his name. So
the Teen Titans comes at a good time when we see the Nightwing 88 that we'll discuss, which I wasn't expecting them to pop up, but I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun talking about it. And we can, of course, talk about who popping up in that issue.
Raven?
Yes, exactly. That's who I'm talking about. Well, I am happy to have you on here. The reason why actually I wanted you in particular to come on here, first of all, I remember reached out to you before and said, man, it's been a long time since you've been on. Is there anything you want? And you had mentioned like Terry Moore had done an arc, and lo and behold, Terry Moore is on this arc that we're doing. It came up pretty quickly, but we've got a pretty solid history, I think, you and I with Terry Moore.
Yeah. I started reading Strangers in Paradise 2002, I think. 2002, I think, is when I started reading the trades that a friend of mine who I met after college was just basically would loan me just a ton of comics. Like, hey, we'd hang out and be like, and so he loaned me Sandman, he loaned me a bunch of other stuff that I'd never read or read bits and pieces of or whatever. And he said, if you ever read Strangers in Paradise, this was the only thing that Terry Moore was producing at the time. And I'd heard of it because I saw it enough in previews and was actually always kind of curious because it was a well-regarded comic book that at different points in time was being published by a different couple of companies. At one point it was published by Image for a little bit, and then I think more just started self-publishing after that. And it was I would read the solicits and it sounded really interesting because it had nothing to do with superheroes or anything else that everybody else was doing. The only other comic that I could think of that I'd heard of but still had not read that was in the same vein would be like Love and Rockets or something like that. And so I was always kind of curious about it, never read it, and he loaned it to me, and I think they were up to book 9, I think, was as far as he had gotten at that point. And then I started buying it in trade after that all the way till its end. So I read it kind of in the back half of its first run. Completely missed Echo. Probably because, and I want to say the reason I missed it was because when Echo came out, I think I was broke. So it was just one of those things. I never bought it. But then I bought the complete Echo off of him at the Baltimore Con, and also bought Rachel Rising in trade And then since then, the only thing I haven't read, and I think you have, and I still have to go buy this trade, is Motor Girl. I don't. Again, that might have been a thing where I just missed it for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a long history with Terry Moore.
Yeah.
Met him several times. Have a lot of trades signed by him. And such. So it's really cool to be here to talk about something he did, because I haven't read a lot of his stuff that's beyond his self-published stuff.
Yeah, I knew of him like in name only, but didn't really associate who he was. So I think I had known that he was on here. I feel like maybe he did a Teen Titans arc, but I could be wrong about that. I think he definitely did one of the volumes of Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane,
Mhm.
but I felt like it wasn't as good as the original stuff. So it's
It was
not like
okay.
I'm not associating like this guy with great things. I had heard of Strangers in Paradise from one of my castmates on Spider-Man Crawl Space, but it's really ironic because you're saying that someone gave you Strangers in Paradise and you were the one who gave me, I'm pretty sure Rachel Rising was the first thing that you lent me that I read of his, that's
Mhm.
like his own creative work, and I really liked it. I mean, there's so much to dig in with that particular tale, but the characters are just so fleshed out, and the fact that the majority of his stories, if not all of them, are like female led, and he just crafts
Mm.
these really strong and well developed and sometimes flawed, oftentimes flawed female characters, is just a great testament to his writing. And so I think you've lent me several copies of different things. You lent me
Yeah.
Echo. Motor Girl I got from him at Baltimore Comic Con. I had him sign. And I'm waiting to get Serial when that comes out in trade
Mhm.
form. So I feel like everything that he's done that's his own, I've really enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He when it comes to female characters, it is really fascinating how well he writes them, and how he will have fun with some of the tropes of comic book female characters. Like sometimes he'll introduce them and then just kind of turn the trope on its head. I always think of Casey from Strangers in Paradise. She's a very tropey character when she
Sure.
starts out, but it's like once you start to develop that character, he plays with that and has fun with it, and makes her A, very likable, and B, three-dimensional
Yeah.
beyond, just kind of the very, because she's kind of a bimbo when she's,
Yeah.
she's like I think she's dating Freddie or somebody. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I did my reread, but yeah, that's how she kind of comes in their lives. Um I should plug over at Two True Freaks, the Two True Freaks has an audio drama production company, and they are doing an full cast audio adaptation of Strangers in
Oh,
Paradise. And I
wow.
believe they're on book 3 at the moment.
Okay.
So you can go to twotruefreaks.com to see that. I'm not involved with it, and but Gene Hendricks and Thomas DJ and them are doing a great job with it. So and more gave him the blessing and everything, and so it's all, it's official in a sense. And it's
Yeah.
really
On
cool
the
to
other
see
hand,
that they're
man.
doing that. Yeah.
And he's all about the shipping. That's one of the reasons why I love his works too. And some
Yes.
really odd couples, like I love Jet and Earl. Like
Hmm.
those are just, you wouldn't imagine those two together, but it's so lovely how they work together, and how, well, you have to read it. So what I'm about to say doesn't make any sense, but the
Yeah.
fact that she can actually feel him and feel his warmth, whereas everyone else she can't. So just some great stuff. Well, before we get into it, we do have to do our Find Our Joy segment, aka Shags, Mac and Cheese of Comfort and Joy, your BFF. So, what, if anything, has been giving you some joy in some of these troubling Omicron times?
What's joy? I'm between joy at the moment.
Between joy at the moment.
I was trying to think of this. The last January's been crazy. We've I've had 5 days of work in January so far, because we
Wow.
missed the entire week due to snow, and then we missed tomorrow. We're recording this on a Wednesday night, and tomorrow we're supposed to go back on a 2-hour delay. That probably will happen, but so it's just been kind of like everything's been thrown out of whack. I got quite a few books for Christmas, and have been just been watching movies and stuff. So I can just tell, I guess on the movie side of things, we watched both A Quiet Place movies, and I really, really enjoyed them. Really loved Not Far From Home, No Way Home, Spider-Man movie. And have been enjoying the Book of Boba Fett. So it's just kind of, and just catching up on, like, we have just kind of a running rotation of shows that we work our way through. So it's just been kind of fun to, after all the holiday programming and after all of the, like, let's watch this movie or whatever, it's been kind of fun to just get back and like try to empty our DVR of all of the various episodes of Batwoman and Legends of Tomorrow that we have on there.
Sure.
I think Supergirl is done because we worked through Supergirl. Superman and Lois just started, and again, and I haven't watched that yet. And I think I'm gonna watch. I taped the 5-part thing that started the Flash this season, but after last season, I think I'm done with the Flash. But I'm holding. We hold on to those CW shows for pretty long, and the Flash is in its like 8th or 9th season, and by then that show like that can get pretty stale.
Yeah.
So it was just, but no, we're enjoying that, and then just our usual. God, I listen to so many podcasts. So true crime podcasts, movie podcast, everything. So it's just kind of it's me just trying to find sanity in the midst of everything. I think the most daily find your joy part of things for me, at least at work, is that I insist on not being on my computer and picking out a book during my lunch half hour, and just reading. And it's whatever I happen to be reading at the moment. I mean, granted, right now I'm reading The Bell Jar, which is not exactly an uplifting book, but
yeah.
I was reading right before Christmas, I was reading Marvel Saga. I just read some Batman stuff, and just reread a few, and I've been reading through the Jack Knight Starman series. So yeah, just it's kind of like all over the place. I try to find it where I can.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get that for sure. I just to pick up of your TV shows, I just started watching, and now I just finished season or series 4 this tonight before we started, Peaky Blinders, which I've been enjoying. And I love the 20s, so that's really great. And then it's got, some mafia and gang related things.
Yeah, we watched the first season, and we keep meaning to pick it back up. So it's, yeah, but from what we've seen of it, we really like it. But it's one of those, sometimes we'll start a show and then like, oh crap, I still have to finish season 2 of Ted Lasso. So
Sure, yeah. Oh, I've heard good things about that. One of my friends said
It's
she was
really
surprised
funny.
I wasn't watching it because I'm such a football fan.
Oh,
So
it's
I'll
really
have to,
funny.
yeah, I'll start that. Today was day 1 of grad school. So not much happening there. I did some readings, did intro stuff. Tom has been a delight because I've been somewhat stressed out because I think the bad thing is I keep looking ahead in the syllabus and seeing all the stuff that's like
Yeah,
coming.
don't do that.
So I'm like, I don't even know what a KUD is.
You know,
And so I'm like texting Tom. Yeah.
It means know, understand, and do. It's part of a lesson plan. So the
Okay.
student will know this, understand this, and then
And do
do
this.
this.
Okay.
It's actually on every one of my lesson plans.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Let's see. I had text at 10:22,
Yeah,
text
see?
at 10:27.
He's like my counselor to be like, it'll be okay, Stella. It'll be okay. But everything seems like really intense and hard right now. And I keep thinking, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, what if I fail this course? What if, and then I don't get this degree? Was this all worth it? So I just need to take it a day at a time and try to calm myself. But I'm thankful for you because you
Oh,
helped and talked me through that and be like, you'll be fine. So you're a good
you,
person to have. And you've
you
been through that
will.
experience. So that you're a
Yeah.
good point person to have.
Yeah. In fact, I did pretty much more or less the same program. I mean, I
Yeah.
did it 5 years ago, or 6 years ago now. So it's probably changed a little bit since then, but some of the stuff you've mentioned, yeah, I was there. So
Yeah.
I remember doing it. And funny enough, I still have everything except for some of the paperbacks that I rented from Amazon and not bought. So,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah,
have
I'm
the
hoping I
notes.
won't have to. They're saying one of them's definitely like an e-book I can get. And then
Mhm.
this other course, the literacy course that I'm taking, there are lots of required texts, but I guess you can get up to 2 chapters free from UVA library. So
Mm.
hopefully I'll be okay. So but that's still, it's an exciting time of like, okay, well, my journey's continuing. Are you a Patriots fan? Because I'm about to say something unfortunate.
Football.
Yeah.
No, I'm a Giants fan, but even
Oh,
then,
okay. So we're good.
I haven't watched the NFL in like
Okay.
3 or 4 years. So no, I'm a
Okay.
Giants
Oh,
fan.
we're okay. I was
I would
afraid I
like
was
to
about to insult
remind,
you.
and as a Giants fan, I
Yes.
I am required to remind people that the Giants beat Tom Brady's Patriots
Ooh,
twice in the Super Bowl.
okay.
So
Well, that's fine. I don't have
I'll hold
any
on to that.
I have no connection to Tom Brady, but I am excited because the Bills, they slaughtered, I would say, the Patriots. I mean, Josh Allen was on fire, but that's why I'm wearing my Buffalo Bills hat. Unfortunately, they're up against the Chiefs, and that's who defeated
Mm.
them last year. So I don't know. Mahomes is a great quarterback, so I guess we'll see what happens. But I'm excited about that. And then my final joy, I think, is that I am going to NYC. I think Carolyn and I had been talking about, we weren't sure yet, but I won tickets to see a Broadway show. I wrote a short essay and it was chosen and I got to choose which show. So we're going to see Company, which we were supposed to see before COVID. So she and I are going to go see that. And then just spur of the moment, I guess it was yesterday, she's like, should we see another show? Because I had chosen a matinee. So it's like, you know what? We're on Broadway. We've got free tickets. Why not? So now, fingers crossed. I mean, we're going to go see The Music Man with Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster. Fingers crossed, because you just don't know. COVID has been shutting down shows. Sometimes you don't know. You could be in the seat and then be like, so sorry. Or you might miss a leading cast member. But I was telling her one of the reasons we decided is that both Sutton and Hugh have had COVID. Not saying that that's, you're not going to get it again, but I'm just like, well, it'd be so soon afterwards. So if anything, they'll just cancel the whole show and then we won't have missed anything. So I'm excited about that, and spending time with her and seeing a show is always a privilege and a blessing. So
Yeah,
there you go.
cool. Yeah,
Okay.
hopefully I'll be able to make it back up to New York City. We're supposed to go in December and cancel
Yeah.
because of COVID. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. As my message, I feel like I haven't said it in a while, and I know it depends on your political affiliations and your belief systems potentially, but I do strongly suggest and advise still wearing masks. I think that I know that some people are just like, that doesn't help or anything, but I think that it does still somewhat help, and being safe and cautious for yourself as well as for others. I think empathy, right? Empathy and compassion
Mhm.
is really big. So maybe put up with some uncomfortableness because you don't like masks, just to help other people.
I mean, we both work in places that are basically petri dishes,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I mean, I've been wearing. I, I don't think there's a single person I know who enjoys being masked up. Maybe some people do, and it's but I don't like it. But whatever. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just second nature to me at this point. I am kind of getting sick of wearing them, but I have also not been sick yet. So
Yeah.
I would rather not get sick.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And have to take time off and have to deal with,
Oh,
even if it's mild, having to quarantine for the number of days my school district says, and all the logistical crap that I would have to
yeah.
go through because I've been exposed and and I tested positive or something. I'd hate,
Yeah.
just
And then your family too would have to stay
yeah.
home
And then
too.
my family has to do, yeah, it's just like, no, I mean, even on that minor level,
Yeah.
which I'm not trivializing anybody who got like long COVID or is really sick or has died. I mean, it's a very, very serious thing, but even on the mild level, like, oh, everyone's going to get it. The crap you've got to go through, it's just not worth it. Just wear it.
He's on his soapbox.
I am
Yeah.
off my soapbox now.
I will say they don't bother me now. I wear 2 of them at work. I work at a hospital, so it's kind of like a big thing. But I feel like now, because it's like oxygen deprivation, that I can run more easily now because I feel like my lungs have expanded. So I don't huff and puff as much when I'm running. But yeah, I usually try to get out during lunch, either to walk or I sit out and read a book, because I just need to leave the enclosed area of the office anyways. There aren't any windows, but then yeah, I can just like breathe and be out there in the outside. So anyways, yeah, continue to be cautious. Okay, so we're going to get on to this. I just have one vintage quickie, which is Robin, and then we're going to do Birds of Prey, our Birds of Prey arc 47, 48, 49. So this quickie from Robin, it is 108, and the Comixology, I guess it was the publisher synopsis. Drury Walker, the man known as Caraxus, is running around committing multiple crimes in Gotham faster than Robin can keep up with him. Meanwhile, Caraxus is holed up downtown. What the heck is going on? Even an able assist from Nightwing can't keep Robin from getting in over his head. And where Babs appears, Tim is radioing her when he spots Caraxus, and she tells him to wait for Dick to come to him, and he kind of rushes on ahead, but that was basically it. So there was no need to really cover all of that. So
I may have bought this issue off the stand. I bought Robin for a very long time. I just don't remember what my last issue was.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I want to say it was right around, I think my last issue might have been around like 125.
Okay.
And I bought it for a little while during like Infinite Crisis.
Oh, Infinite Crisis.
So,
yeah. Okay, well, the main event, some Birds of Prey. So Tom has graciously agreed to do a synopsis for this arc. And then we will, so you can do the whole thing, and then we will split them up and talk about them individually.
All right, yeah. So I'm going to go all the way through, excuse me, with Birds of Prey numbers 47, 48, and 49. And they all have the same creative team throughout. So I'm just going to run down the creative team right away. Terry Moore is our writer. Art is Amanda Connor on pencils and Jimmy Palmiotti on inks. Brian Miller does colors, separations by Hi-Fi. Albert de Guzman is the letterer. The editor was Lysa Hawkins. Each of the colors is by Phil Noto, and they are absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
I love Phil Noto's covers on this series.
Agreed.
Like even back when I would see it in previews, I was always like, they just were amazing. And I remember at one point, I think Ed Benes takes over the covers.
Oh yeah.
And I was disappointed.
And that's interesting to say, because Ed Benes is a pretty good artist.
He is a good artist.
Yeah.
He is a good artist. But like, you know, sometimes it's like Ed, not every woman has a C cup. At least it's not Jim Balin. Anyway, our release dates, cover dates, November and December of 2002 and January 2003. Release dates, September 18th, 2002, October 23rd, 2002, and November 20th of 2002. This is a 3-part storyline called The Chaotic Code, and part 1 is called Icarus Rising. We open on a LexCorp satellite and the words of President Lex Luthor, who is giving a press conference announcing some huge scientific breakthrough that is going to be, according to him, the hope of all mankind. We then cut to an apartment where a bruised woman is being held hostage by a man named Willie, who is screaming at the television and waving around a gun. Black Canary busts through the window and they start fighting. Meanwhile, Barbara Gordon is hanging upside down in her sweatpants on some board, doing what I assume is some sort of exercise type of thing, while talking on the phone to Senator Fitzgerald about the LexCorp breakthrough. And she says that she's interested in whatever this is and would like to accompany him to the demonstration in New York that Luthor is announcing. And they will meet up with Atticus Blackaver, the LexCorp scientist who made the breakthrough. Dinah has Willie all tied up and duct taped while they wait for the police, and she meets Babs the next day. They travel to New York, and Babs travels up the stairs of the building in her sweet new wheelchair and heads into the press conference. Talia, who I believe is Luthor's chief of staff.
Oh, see, I was confused because I'm like, is this Talia al Ghul?
That is Talia al Ghul.
Oh. Okay.
But I think, I can't remember what position she held. I want to say she's the chief of staff. She's not the vice president, but
this is the first time I've encountered her with Lex Luthor. Okay. So your guess is as good as mine.
All right. Well, she introduces Blackaver, and who talks about how he's essentially found a way to extend life, almost a cure for death in a way. And it lies in the hands of a 17-year-old girl named Madison, who is a citizen of a country called Altavia. He has Madison's blood drawn while prattling on about something called the Chaos Code, and introduces Madison as someone who, quote, has control over her own chaotic code. Madison glances at Babs with a worried look. Outside of the New York building, Dinah argues with what looks like a Secret Service man over where her car is parked, and he pulls out a pistol and takes her hostage. Back inside, Madison does a live demonstration of what is essentially a healing power on Senator Boucher, whose heart condition is magically healed. Barbara gets skeptical about whether or not Madison's power will last very long. Meanwhile, Dinah's still being held hostage in their SUV, but she's being forced to drive somewhere. So what does she do? She throws in reverse and mistakenly crashes into a telephone pole and then goes forward, sending her assailant through the windshield. For some reason, this does not render him unconscious.
Or dead.
Or dead. Like, he hits the damn windshield. This guy should be out. Yeah. But nope. He does try to pull a gun on her, and she just sends his head through the window, and that does the trick. Barbara continues to press Blackaver on the effects of Madison's powers, and he responds by have Madison touch Barbara's legs, which she can then feel. Madison whispers, "Please, Barbara Gordon, help me," while Dinah screams over the radio that she needs help. And she does, because there are several men in suits pointing guns at her. Part 2, Crash and Burn, opens with Barbara still astonished that she can feel her legs. And I'm just think of Dr. Strangelove. My Fuhrer, yeah. I can walk. But several people brandishing guns have now entered the room, so the joy is a little bit short-lived. They attempt to kidnap Madison, who blasts them with some sort of energy, while Babs breaks out what looks like nunchucks and fights off some of the attackers. She then goes full Batgirl and takes out several thugs before jumping out of a window and swinging to safety. Dinah sits in the back of the van surrounded by her kidnappers, who were working with the armed men in the building. After some witty banter, she starts beating up the guys in the back of the van. Panicked, the driver takes off. Babs and Madison are on the streets of New York, while with Babs more happy to stretch her legs while Madison, Babs and Madison are on the streets of New York, with Babs more than happy to stretch her legs while Madison worries that Blackaver will come for her. They get into a cab, and after making a phone call, she tells the driver to head to a private terminal at JFK. And I have to say, just because this is a really weird like the pages go back and forth between Barbara and Black Canary through most of this issue. So you are cutting back and forth between scenes. It's actually very television. This whole arc is very much like a television show. Sure. Where there's, all right. So we're now back at the remains of the press conference. Blackaver claims that their attackers are Altavian forces who are trying to abduct Madison. He's also very curious as to who this Barbara Gordon is and why she's such a good fighter. Dinah digs among her unconscious kidnappers and the supplies that are in the back of the van. She finds a shovel or a spade, and she starts slamming it against the shield between her and her driver. She then waits for one of the thugs to wake up and finds out that, well, they're just hired guns. They have no idea who they're working for. They have no ideals. They're just in it for the money. Barbara is in the air trying to get some answers from people on the ground and from Madison. She lets Madison sleep while she fields a call from Senator Fitzgerald, who tells her that Senator Boucher is dead. And just as he does that, Barbara drops to the floor unconscious. We then cut to Dinah, who uses her sonic scream to blast the back of the van open, but the panicked driver sends it over the side of a bridge and toward a river. Finally, part 3, Family Matters.
Oh, that was a good show.
No, God, that show was horrible. Kidding me?
Oh, boy.
So no Steve Urkel in this, but so Dinah opens the van. So Family Matters, part 3 opens with the van dropping into the river. Dinah lands in behind it. She's fine, though. On the plane, Madison wakes up and sees Barbara unconscious. She wakes up and Madison offers to restore her, but Babs says that she might actually not survive another healing. Just then, the pilot comes on the intercom to say that they're being forced to make an emergency landing, and that Madison says that Blackhaver has found her via a tracking device that he's implanted under her skin. Black Canary resurfaces and hears Oracle's SOS just before her waterlogged comms go on the fritz. She's also pulled all the thugs out of the river, but they are not long for this world because they're all wearing kill collars under their skin.
You.
And whomever hired them knows they failed in their mission, so their heads all go splat.
It was Amanda Waller.
Plane lands at JFK and Blackhaver walks aboard. Babs tells Madison to run, and Blackhaver says, Miss Gordon, every time I see you, you're going down. Really, Terry? She responds by hopping on a food cart with a fire extinguisher and sends herself off the wing of the plane, but then she lands on her back. Out in the sticks, Canary comes across a guy taking a leak near a billboard and steals his motorcycle, but she leaves him a nice note on where to find it. Back at JFK, Blackhaver gives the big villain speech, telling Babs his plan to clone Madison and weaponize her powers. Just then, Canary comes flying over the chain link fence on the motorcycle, takes out a few of Blackhaver's men, and then comes face to face with Talia. The two fight while Babs makes her move and starts hitting people with the fire extinguisher, and Madison makes a run for it. Blackhaver catches up to her, and Madison responds by burning his hands and revealing to the audience that he is her father. Talia and Canary continue to fight until Canary throws Talia into a charged up Madison, barbecuing the villainess. Dinah picks everyone up, gets them on the motorcycle, and takes them away. At the White House, Lex is on the phone with Blackhaver and says that he's sending two of his assistants over to help him move to a better facility. That can't be good.
No.
Then we cut to the Barbara Boucher School for Girls. They're dropping Madison off here as it's the boarding school where she's going to live. Babs and Dinah are happy that she's protected, but when Madison enters her dorm room, she sees a dozen roses and a card that reads, "Good luck at your new school, Madison. I'm so proud of you and will call you soon, your friend, Talia." The end for now.
I just looked at the back of 48 and look, speak of the devil. Can you believe it? Look at how young he looks.
He's
Tom
my
Brady
age.
for people. Well, Tom, where's your milk mustache? Okay. Thank you, Tom, for doing that lovely synopsis.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll split these guys up, and I do like to talk about the covers, and I think attention should be paid to them because you and I agree that Phil Noto does some amazing work. Now he's one of those that I can always spot, like, oh, that's Phil Noto. So first cover, it is the not hashtag Carolyn knows, because we actually see all of Barbara, so that doesn't happen all of the time.
We see all of Barbara on all three of these covers.
Yes, which is great. And I think it's appropriate given what she goes through or what her arc is in that story. We've got Canary hitting, I guess, just an agent. I'm not sure what's happening up here, unless
I think that's supposed to be Madison. Yeah,
okay.
The girl.
And her power and everything.
Yeah.
Thoughts on, and of course Lex, who doesn't play too much of a part, but he's his floating head right there. Thoughts on this cover and how it's laid out, and would you be able to look at it and be like, oh, I can, it matches what the story's about?
It does. It tells you some images that are in the story. It's very reminiscent of, like, George Perez used to do covers like this from time to time, where it's just this kind of a big collage of like things that are associated with the story or events that are in the story. So yeah, it's fine. It's actually, out of the three, it's probably my third favorite of the three. I mean, that's really not saying they're all beautiful. So it's like, but if I have to rank them, this is the bottom of that list. Mainly because it's a little, I think it's just a little busy. It's what Babs is looking at off screen. I don't know. Yeah.
It's interesting, that he didn't perhaps angle her towards us in the way that he had angled the floating head, so that they could have been a mirror image. Otherwise, it would have made more sense to have Lex's like in profile or something like that. Yeah. But I also thought of you. It's kind of weird to say that, this little black bubble right here, which says that it's in remembrance, or we remember 9/11. So it had been 1 year. But I say that because Tom had just produced a really well done
Oh,
limited
nice.
series on 9/11 and different media and things that came about afterwards, or yeah, so
Mhm.
like poetry and books and everything. And that's on Two True Freaks. So I really recommend listening to that.
Thanks.
Okay. Of course. It comes from the heart. What do you think about this first issue here?
I thought, like I said, this whole thing felt like three, like I Alias was on at the time, so
Okay.
it reminded me, like, it had that pace to it. I loved Alias, especially in its first like 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Um, and it had that, like, it has a great intro of this press conference. It's going to set up the whole thing, because like the entire second issue takes place with, at least with Barbara, in that building, and then they take it out. So it is a truly like a 3 act structure of this story. And we get this establishing shot of the, and and everything, but then like we have Dinah just beating somebody up because we just need an action scene of Dinah beating somebody up, and
Yeah.
it totally works. It's very much like, like how they introduced Natasha in the first Avengers movie. Like, she was in Iron Man 2 prior, but when Natasha shows up in Avengers, she's tied to a chair, and she was, getting the information out of everybody,
Yeah.
gets the phone call, and then just beats everybody up. It's just sort of like, it's a great establishing thing for Dinah, and it's a great fight too. She's beating up this guy who's basically a domestic abuser. We don't really need to know why he's there. He never
Yeah.
appears anything else. She just, here's a thug who was in trouble. He was holding this woman hostage. She's coming in and taking care of it, and then that's good. And I love it. And I love how, she basically essentially answers the phone in the middle of it, et cetera, et cetera. And then we cut later. So I love the opening to this. And this sets up everything really well. His whole science mumbo jumbo about the chaotic code or whatever, it's just believable enough that I'm like, yeah, okay,
We'll
it's
go with
comics.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll go with it. Okay. It's basically, she's if this were Marvel, she'd be a mutant.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Like,
Yeah.
she'd be a mutant with healing powers, and the healing powers, and and we don't find out until the next issue that there's a downside to it. And I like the fact that he left that out, that he had the appropriate cliffhanger at the end of Barbara can feel her legs again. And it was like, ooh. And I had a feeling, even if I had been reading this only for the first time and didn't have the, the history of everything that came after that, I never really read Birds of Prey,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew enough about the title. I saw Barbara in enough in Nightwing, Robin, throughout like Infinite Crisis and Justice League. Like, I knew I'd seen enough of her, and I knew enough of her to know that this was not going to be a permanent thing. So it works though, because you're just like, okay, well, what's going to go wrong? And I think that's a really good tease too, when they're like, oh yeah, I can walk again. You're like, yeah, this isn't going to work. So
Yeah. And yeah, I've got some questions about that in particular. I do. So it's going to be unfair of me for a little bit, but I probably will be comparing subsequent writers to Chuck Dixon, just because he was the one to really
that makes
begin
sense.
the
Yeah.
era of Birds of Prey. So I will say, and I'm giving, of course, the praise and the props to Terry Moore, but it did feel very Chuck Dixon-esque, because Chuck would always have almost a Bond like intro
Hmm.
that may relate to the mission on a whole, or it could just be a cold opening and you see that action scene. So I'm glad that he started off like this. And you get a sense that she was on that case for a little bit, because she said that he kidnapped Maria and abused her for 2 days.
Yeah.
So it seemed like it was a more difficult mission than it may have seemed initially, but just to have that action sequence, you're right. And because otherwise she kind of doesn't do too much. Like she's kidnapped almost, and so she doesn't, this is like her big action piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then focusing on Barbara. So yeah, the chaotic code, yeah, it's the answer as to why all matter moves towards chaos. So just so we can be clear about what that actually is. And so Madison is able to manipulate that and I guess fix things or put them the way they are. What do you think about this wheelchair that Barbara has, that because of, I guess, gyroscopes and things like that, she's able to go upstairs, and it is Wayne technology. Do you think that's something that it makes sense that she would have? Do you feel like, oh, maybe Barbara would not use that? She would like to have something that's Barber powered? Or are you okay with this?
I'm fine with that. I actually didn't give it much thought. I think the design's pretty cool. Um, I think he makes a quick comment about it being like things like this building should be wheelchair like accessible. So it's just kind of a little nudge in that
Yeah.
direction, which I think is a good thing. The wheelchair doesn't really come into play in the story very much anyway.
Yeah.
Like she's in it, and then like once she gets her feeling the legs back, as far as we know, it's still sitting in the press conference room in New York City at the end of the story. So, you
Yeah.
know, I guess the only thing that comes in handy in here is there's clearly a compartment or two to hide whatever weapon she needs to
Right.
hide, which I think
Yes.
that to me is a Barbara Gordon. That's a Batgirl
Absolutely.
thing. That was, you know, and that I thought was a cool touch, because it's like, yeah, that in very in character.
Yes. And hopefully there's security on that wheelchair then,
Mhm.
because who knows what else. Yeah, because I think a couple, maybe a batarang came out, but definitely the nunchucks, which you said
Yeah.
nunchucks for some reason. I was like, when I saw them, I thought, yeah, why aren't they Eskrima sticks? But I guess we will go with them. So I think I'm like on the fence just because, oh, I don't know. Why can't it just be a regular one? But we know that she has souped up the van that she uses. And I know that there are some tricked out wheelchairs. So I think even though that this may be somewhat fantastical, I think it also borders into realistic. And you're right that, I mean, with Babs being sort of the queen of technology, that she would probably have something like that.
Yeah, and she's pretty well established by now as Oracle. She's gone through her whole post injury arc. We saw the whole Suicide Squad arc. So
Right.
by this time, it would make sense for her to have upgraded to something like this, as opposed to, if this were 1989, 1990, it probably wouldn't have made much sense for her
Mm-hmm.
to get like the Professor X type of wheelchair, you know, the one he would, rather than in the early 90s when Professor X was in a wheelchair that was basically like a floating golden
Sure.
space sled, you know, they kind of
Yes.
hovered around
Oh,
in that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't, I mean, they didn't have the technology here in the DC. They're trying to ground it, no pun intended. But had she done that in the early 90s, I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah. One page that I had a question on is you mentioned that Madison she sees Barbara and kind of looks to her for help. That's how I read it as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that this is page 12 on my paper copy, but
Yes.
why do you think, is it just because Barbara's in the front row or close to it? Can we read anything into it? Like, does she know who Barbara is? Why does she kind of look and see Barbara and think like, oh, this might be someone that could help me?
I don't know how she clues into whether or not she knows who Barbara is. Um, I think it's a little bit of, because Barbara's staring at her weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks at her, and I think the first look is kind of like recognition on Madison's part that she's going to have to do something to Barbara.
Mm,
Because like I think Madison knows why she's there.
okay.
You know, she's there to do the demonstration, so she's looking at Barbara. And I think part of the look is help me, but part of the look is, oh crap, I'm going to have to touch this woman and do this, and out of concern. And then it's the second part is it's part cry for help, almost part warning. I think there's a couple of things going on there. Maybe she's also trying to warn her
Sure.
a little bit. Like I think she knows that what she's going to do is going to ultimately hurt or kill. I don't think it kills Barbara because she's probably younger and healthier than the senator who
Mm-hmm.
had the heart problem, and perhaps it was the ailment too, considering that Barbara's ailment that's cured is the loss of her feeling in her legs, and not a congenital heart failure, like a heart
Right.
condition. She cured the other woman's heart condition, and all of a sudden it bounced back, and it probably, my understanding, where I'm getting ahead of us, but my understanding of what it is that once it comes back, it's actually worse than it had been, or at least at first, or it's a shock at first. So,
Yeah.
so she probably went into cardiac arrest when the senator got her, the heart condition came back.
Yeah. I believe in you, and I
Yeah.
agree with you. So let's talk about that scene because there's a lot going on there. Of course, Barbara was calling into question just Madison and what was going on and this chaotic code and all of that. And then Madison walks up to her, prodded by Atticus, and uses her manipulation of the chaotic code on her legs. So I have several questions about this. So first of all, do you feel like Barbara gave her consent to have her legs touched like this
Um,
or to have this happen?
I don't think she really gave her consent. I think it was because Madison kneels down in front of her. This is on
Right.
page 20.
Yeah.
And she's doing that sort of trying to squirm away out of the chair thing if she could
Yeah.
move out of the chair. But is kind of trapped into it. So I think she has no choice but to go along once Madison gets going.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Do you find that weird that Madison is doing her chaotic code touching over the legs, whereas really it's the spine that's the issue for Barbara?
No, because I think that is just an assumption being made based on what you see in a person in a wheelchair that they somehow can't use their legs.
Okay.
So on a split, like she wouldn't know that the spine,
That it's a spinal
yeah,
trauma.
like she doesn't know Barbara, so she sees this woman in a wheelchair, she automatically thinks there's something wrong with her legs and doesn't necessarily think about her spine.
Okay.
So that makes sense to me.
Okay. And you're also fine then that even though she mistakenly is working in that area, that it would still work?
I believe so, especially since the thing covers her like entire body when on page 21. Yeah, page 21.
Yeah.
It's like the light of whatever, it envelops her whole body. And I know that's done for effect to show the healing that's working.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is like an electrical charge throughout, perhaps it does,
Yeah.
restore the feeling.
Yeah. Was that consistent with the senator too? Was that all over her? Yeah. That was her whole body too. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So then my final question about this particular scene is that Barbara's grateful. She is grateful for this. She says, I know this won't last, but I feel thank you. And do you agree that, she would probably be grateful knowing that it would wear off at a point in time? Or do you think that would be even more painful giving her this temporary gift for her to experience what it was like, only to have that taken away from her?
Um, I think she's kind of not thinking it through when she says thank you. It's almost like a heat of the moment type of thing. Like she's genuinely shocked that this happened. No pun intended on the previous panel, but she's like really surprised. She's like,
Yeah.
oh my, I can feel my legs. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think she expected it to happen. So when that surprise happens, she's still skeptical. She's like, this isn't going to last.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's almost like a genie granting a wish or something. It's like, there's a euphoria in the moment. And I think she's in the moment. So it tracks with me, especially since she's surprised it actually, it didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
I mean, that she was pretty. I don't think she thought it was going to happen. So, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, her first, well, it seems like there's some feeling. I don't know if it's pain maybe or just like a weird sensation, but she does scream out and then she says, my God, what have you done? And then once that shock wears over, I think there's this new like, oh my gosh, I can feel my legs. So yeah, I just have a trouble, I think, reconciling, I guess, this gratefulness with the fact that she knows it's going to wear off and just how painful that is in fact going to be, which I think we see it. I think Terry Moore does a good job later on. I guess it'd be 49 where it does wear off and she's like, oh my gosh.
I am going to no prize it by
Okay.
saying that along with the physical cure,
Mm-hmm.
there's a almost like a high, like a
Mm,
psychological high that's going
sure.
on here.
Okay.
So you are kind of blissed out because of what happened. And in that moment, you're not thinking rationally of like, so if he said, like, we have a complicated surgical procedure that we're going to do for you to give your legs back and blah, blah, blah. She probably would have thought about it through and been like, no, 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 this isn't going to
Right.
happen. I'm not going to do it, blah, blah, blah. Like we could have had that more intellectual conversation. But to be completely honest, I think it's just, I think she gets zapped, and in the zap, it's maybe it's adrenaline or maybe it's something else, but there's some sort of sense of euphoria that comes in there. And that's, so that's my no prize. There's a psychochemical reaction in addition to the physical.
Yeah. I can get on board with your no prize.
It
Final
makes
question.
the crash when they come down
Yeah,
even more
even
potent
worse.
too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. My last question kind of bleeds over to the next issue, but I just wonder why Dinah never really used her canary cry initially. Like there were several instances where I thought, why aren't you using your canary cry? You could get yourself out of this situation.
Does she need to recharge? Is it something like she does as a last resort? I don't know. I haven't been reading enough of it to know the extent of her powers. Is it like one of those things where she only can use it so every so often, or else she, like it has to recharge itself, or
She
I'm not
should be good to go. I mean, the whole
okay.
reason why she was healed because she was dropped in that Lazarus pit. So
Okay.
I don't
So
think
she
there's
can
a
just,
yeah. And she didn't use it at all in this issue. Not even with
yeah.
that. Did she use it with that guy? I don't think
No,
so.
she didn't. I don't think
Yeah.
she used it at all. I don't know. Maybe she just thought it wasn't really going to be that much of a hard problem.
Okay.
Like maybe she underestimated their ability to get her. So
Yeah.
she's
And
being
she
a
is
little cocky.
surrounded at least so that she would have had to do like a weird 360
Yeah,
in
she's
the end.
and that last
But
page, there's no way she could take
yeah,
out one or two, but the others are gonna, yeah, she's in a rock in a hard place
a
here.
bit.
Wearing a
Odysseus.
very 2000s outfit.
Oh yeah. Well, just wait till her costume gets shredded. Any other thoughts on 47 before we move on to 48?
uh No, but I will say that I like Amanda. I've always liked Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti as artists. I think I first encountered them when um, they were doing Power Girl. It might have been
Oh
in the
yeah.
JSA comic and not just the Power Girl comic, but Power Girl was the character I remember. Amanda Connor from. I
Mm-hmm.
remember Jimmy Palmiotti going back into the early '90s when he was inking Joe Quesada, uh, on quite a bit from like Valiant Marvel. And Palmiotti's been around since like the late '80s on Marvel and early '90s in Marvel, just inking things over and over. So I've always loved his stuff, and yeah, I've always liked her. So it was kind of cool to see this. They're a good match for Terry Moore, and they're a
Yeah.
good match for the tone that Terry Moore uses in
Yeah.
this, because it's dangerous, but it's fun.
Yep.
And that's what I'm getting out of this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, on to 48. Here's the cover here. We've got a half Oracle mask, half Batgirl symbol / maybe a batarang with a red circular background. I'm not sure about
Mhm.
that circle, but it could be if it's in line with this beginning, maybe representing Madison and her power, the chaotic code,
Okay.
maybe.
I do have to show you this. So I have it on DC Infinite, and when you get to the last page of each issue on DC Infinite, it's an ad for various Birds of Prey trades, including
By Gil
that
Simone.
illustration, the Gail Simone run, with that illustration by Ed Benes.
Oh, there you go.
I don't. It's funny. Like I don't remember Barbara's breast ever being that buxom. It's just like it's like, and she's got one button in on that. It's very yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not Jim Balent, but or
Yeah.
Balent, but it's still, it's just crazy. Because like with Canary, I'm like, okay, and I never liked the midriff bearing Hunter's costume either, by the way. it just seems so unnecessary.
Sure. Well,
Just-
got to sex them up somehow.
anyway, but yeah. I always like the one that Helena was wearing like in the 90s, like the around like No Man's Land and stuff like that. That or before that, it's just the purple and the black under it.
Yeah.
Just I always thought that was really cool. I like that character too.
Oh, finally. I think we've had discussions. But this, we've got a full-bodied Barbara Gordon pose. This is probably when she has thrown herself out of the window. So there's the broken
Yes.
glass and everything, and Madison hanging on. Not really sure what's going to happen since she's not
Yeah.
connected to a line, but very action oriented, giving that to Barbara, which I think is great and something we've probably not seen, with the exception of Birds of Prey #8 with
Mhm.
Barbara before. So very cool there.
Yeah, it's a really cool cover. It's hard for me to choose between this and the next one because I really like the drama that's on the next one. But I really do like this. The Batgirl, and I think that's a Batgirl and Oracle symbol behind them. And they I like the fact that she is looking down. It's very well composed, and the fear on Madison's eyes and stuff. It's a really, really cool. This is one of those, you'll notice this on the stand type of covers.
Yeah, absolutely. Another, I'm getting really sort of nitpicky on some of these things here, but she is going crazy with a lot of these action moves. She is loving it. So I really feel lots of Batgirl as Barbara Gordon. Which is great. But I also feel like she was just healed. Shouldn't her legs be really weak and difficult to control? But she seems to be doing okay. We're just going with it? You think we're just going?
I honestly think it's like, it's whatever Madison's powers are, it's almost like an overcorrection, or it's something, and then that's why the crash is so huge.
Yeah.
So because the senator was like, I feel younger than ever, and I think
true,
honestly it just shot through her. So there's a lot of adrenaline pumping. And it's not like she's been her legs might be weak to a certain extent, and those first few moves before she does the split kick on page 5, she's got her legs tucked as if they had just come out of the wheelchair. So she's almost using mostly her arm strength there. So that does, the batarang came out, the grappling hook or whatever came out, and then she pulls herself up. So she's actually going on instinct because she hasn't had the use of her legs. And it's not until she's in a position where she starts kicking and then running. So, it's not like she stood up and started running at everybody. I thought that was pretty cool. And it establishes the fact that there's some sort of line hanging there. So when they jump out the window, she has it. Because that was, for a split second, I was like, when I was reading through it, I had to go back. I was like, where did they get the batarang from?
Yeah.
It's like back in the day when like you'd see Spider-Man swinging across and you're just like, where is that connected to, Peter?
Yeah.
Like, Batman has a few panels of that here and there, especially the Norm Brayfogle era, which I love, but there are some panels where I'm like, where are you swinging from?
He's just levitating.
Coming right in.
Like Dua Lipa. Yeah, for sure. I love it. I think just the joy, the unadulterated joy on her face, I think really just brings it back. And that's absolutely, I think, what someone would feel if they were to get back something that they had lost. And I think the joy of also saving someone and being like that in charge of your agency and in control, whereas normally she's been behind the computer and Dinah's been the one in the field. So it's a nice role reversal. Dinah's not necessarily leading anything, but she's kind of off on the side. She's benched a bit because she's kind of trapped in there, and Barbara's really in control of this. So it's very cool. I did like how, because when she was doing all this, I thought, man alive, is no one going to question how you're doing this? But I'm glad that Terry Moore had Atticus say, who are you, Barbara Gordon? Because he had been watching and like, this is a little unusual that this woman is all of a sudden gets her chaotic code changed, but she leaps into action as if she's done this before. I don't know if that will carry on with anything, but I mean, he did
I
lose
have
his,
no idea if this guy
yeah.
shows up at all from here on out. So your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, where I was reading it, I initially, not in the paper run, but someone had said that, and I guess this is really for after 49, that Madison never pops up again. So even though it seems like something could happen, especially with Talia and that letter or
Mhm.
and the roses she left, I guess she doesn't pop up again, but I'll wait and see rather than trust people on the interwebs. So you mentioned in your synopsis how you were going back and forth because, of course, the story itself goes back and forth. And I could
Yeah.
ask this for any of these issues, but do you feel like the formatting of the story is fine? Is it jarring that it goes back and forth between scenes, Barbara and Dinah, and what's going on, action and non-action to a certain extent?
No, because we've established that they're the two. It's a book with two main characters, so each character has their share of the plot, and they're both off. They're both off panel. Dinah is involved with the issue, so it's not like it's a solo Babs adventure. She actually is part of the story. So we do need to see we need to see what's going on with her, especially when the press conference, like having her be kidnapped by these guys in the van, works really well because when the press conference goes, foobar, um, you want to know where Dinah is. It's like, why isn't she busting in with the canary cry? It's like, oh, she's being held hostage. So that adds to that. That provides a realism. And then, just like I said, just like a really good episode of television, you have a few minutes of this, and then you cut back to, and here's where Barbara is, and here's there, and so you might have a commercial in between somewhere. But yeah, it's well edited. If this were a show, it would have been very well edited.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how different it is in the fact that Barbara and Dinah are really not in contact with one another or no communication. So leading up to this, yeah, that's just something that's been very consistent, unless they're just in a no radio zone or radio silent situation. But here they've been trying, but it's just failed. And so the scenes are separate. They're in different things. There's one, I do like how I don't know if it's this one. Oh, it must be, where the plane that Barbara is in passes over where the truck is, which I thought it was pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure it was this one.
Yes.
And it's just like a little blink and you miss it situation. I don't know if I'll be able to find it.
I'm flipping through.
I thought it was near the end, before she falls off the bridge.
And I can't find it, but I know the exact panel
Yeah,
that you were thinking of. Oh, well.
that's okay. Believe us that exists, that they pass. And it's just really interesting that they're in the same space at one point, but they just can't communicate. So, okay. I guess my final on this one is the emotion. Does Terry Moore as well as the artist capture the emotion? I have it on page 1819 of when Barbara realizes that it's going to wear off and it could be fatal, and then it actually wearing off and her collapsing. How do you feel? Is that scene successful?
I think it is, because it's it's a progression over several panels. So it's the last three panels on page 18, and Madison's fallen asleep. And she's kind of just looking at her. It's a very sweet sort of look, like, she obviously cares for this girl. And then all of a sudden, like, she's hit by a pain, and just the beads of sweat and her looking down. And then when you flip it to the next thing, her, it's just like she's getting progressively weaker over the course of the 7 or 8 panels on the page, to the point where she collapses. So I think that's done very nicely dramatically. They could have very well had her be like, my legs, and then the next panel she's out, but they had her fall down gradually over the course of a few panels, and that, I think, that added to the drama.
Do you think there's any resentment? I'm just looking at this one panel in the middle there that she actually looks back at Madison as she's sleeping. And it's not like the face looks really angry or anything, but I just wonder, does she ever give a last look of like, oh man, so it's worn off. You did this to me. Or is it just like,
I think she's starting to put two and two together, but I think she passes out before it really,
yeah,
she can really express it.
man.
It's kind of like an, oh my God, look, sort of like it's shock in a different way. And then
Yeah.
she's out conscious, like she's unconscious. It's like the last thing she thinks of before she loses consciousness.
Which is interesting. She knew to a certain extent that was going to happen all along, but I think knowing and almost understanding are two different things, or like experiencing it. So my last thing is just that this, even though it's not drawn by Terry Moore, just feels like a very Terry Moore drawing that he would make. Like I can see Catch You on the back of there or something, holding on to that and her face. Yeah. So anything else on 48 before we get to the last issue?
No, but I mean, again, it's a great cliffhanger, so to speak. We got the Babs cliffhanger in issue 47. We get the Dinah one here, and I love the line, "Will you ever learn it? Timing, timing, timing." He gives her a real wit. She's very funny.
Yeah.
And she has there's an arrogance about her character that's very attractive. If like there's something very endearing about how cocky she is throughout the first couple of issues of this storyline, and how she just brash she is, and it's very endearing as opposed to obnoxious.
It's certainly not a Guy Gardner.
No, not at all.
Yeah, for sure. So do you think that 3 issues was good for this arc then? Do you feel like it's well spaced? We didn't have any extra. It's all good. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like, because we're right. This is what, 2002, right? So we are just on the cusp of like the beginning of the writing for the trade era, where you're going to start getting like regular 6-issue storylines and things like that. Because I think this is right before Bendis launches Ultimate Spider-Man, or maybe they already launched by then. I don't remember what year Ultimate Spider-Man started, but like to me, that's one of the first like true like, because that was a decompressed storytelling. More storytelling over the course of his career from series to series has become more and more decompressed.
Okay.
Those first few Strangers in Paradise trades take a lot longer to read than the ones at the end, and like an issue of Rachel Rising or Serial don't take very long to read. At least go on a first read through, you just go through it pretty quickly. So he's adapted the times, that he's found a nice middle here. It's a good, just tight 3 episodes, and it's truly a guest spot. You can do something with it, but you got to put the toys back the way they were. Nothing really fundamentally changes about them, but it doesn't need to, because it's just a really cool, it's like I said, it's like a really cool episode of a show.
A
couple of episodes of the show. In fact, it's probably like one episode if you really think about it, with a couple of key commercial breaks right at the clip.
Yes. Oh, those commercial breaks. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then our final one, 49. You said might be your favorite one, but we've got the clock tower behind Atticus, and Atticus is looming over Barbara, who is on the ground. She's lost the feelings of her legs, and then of course her wheelchair is back there as well. And then the contrast there of the green and the,
I like the coloring.
For sure.
I think they did a good job with this villain character. They made him, they didn't make him slimy mad scientist, Bond villain mad scientist. That they didn't so he's a little bit skeezy. He's a little bit of a skeezy Steve Jobs or something. So but I like the contrast in color here. I do like the fact that he kept Barbara's hair completely red as usual. So there's that clue. It works really well. And like just the normalcy of her clothes and her body on the cover, it's just a very natural looking figure. Like butt's not popping out, it's, which is, it's stupid to say, oh, the anatomy's all correct, but like, it's just, it looks like, and he's looming ominously. So it's a really dramatic cover. That's why I like both of the last two. There's appropriate moments of drama in each of them.
Speaking of butt shots, I don't know if you noticed, but there were many Amanda Connor butt shots, and I was wondering what's up with that. Is that just something she does? I guess I'm not as well versed in her.
She does. Yeah,
There's one right here.
Yeah, she does she's very good at, it's fun in a way that's not the sort of pervy Greg Land drawing from porno type of stuff. I mean, it's really, really good. Because it like, again, it matches the tone. It's silly and cheesecakey in some ways and stuff. That's why, like, she clearly has a lot of fun with Power Girl when she draws Power Girl later on. And she does draw Starfire. I know she was like that. They did the Starfire series that was part of the New 52. Or it was part of the DCU. It was like, it was after the. I know what you're talking about. So I had a couple of issues with that. I know I read the first few issues and then don't remember why I didn't read the rest. Because I remember enjoying it. I think I just missed a few and whatever, but I know Shag liked it.
I'm sure he did. I will say I do enjoy Battle Damaged Dinah.
This is so fun. I actually like this sequence because of the fact that, there are certain artists who have worked for DC and or Marvel who were writers who would have shown that, and just the splatter of blood, like just that 3 panels is really good because you get your that's the whole brain fills you in on how gross that is. You don't need to see the head pop off.
Yes.
On any of them, and it's just like, oh wow, that is cruel.
Yeah.
Like,
sometimes it's, I guess that's true of, what was it? Death in the Family. The fact that they never really showed the crowbar connecting, but it was like your mind fills it in. So it's
off panel.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific.
Yeah. And this is a much gorier take on the spy villain trope of having like the fake tooth that's a cyanide capsule or something. You know what I mean? Like they've got the suicide pill in their cheek or whatever, and they bite down on it, and all of a sudden they're foaming at the mouth. So no, this is like, no, they've implanted collars under our skin. It's going to pop our heads off.
But are they the ones doing it though? It doesn't seem like they're in charge of the destroying.
No, somebody has has triggered it. That's what I was saying. Somebody triggered this. That's why they're so scared. They're like, oh my God, they're going to kill us.
It seems like this is a question that I just didn't understand. It seemed like the airplane crash, like it doesn't land well. And I know that it needed to make an emergency landing, but it really didn't really need to crash. It was just being forced down by another plane. Did you have any thoughts on whether or not this made sense, or do you have any insight?
We didn't
there's like
see
smoke coming from it.
Yeah, we didn't see it crash. So
no. I just thought, well, it would just land on the runway, but it didn't.
Yeah. By the way, page 3 is where you see the bridge.
Oh yeah, there it is with the plane up there. So I was like, oh, so they're connected, but
people are standing out watching. I'm looking to see, do they go down there? I think they are essentially literally forced down by the other plane. I don't think they're hit with anything. So I would imagine that just the aggressive nature of what looks like a jumbo jet, that's not a small, that's like a, it's a 747 or something. It's a big plane. I think the bigger plane pushing on the other plane. I don't know how the physics work, but I would imagine that if it doesn't, that it's forcing it to the ground.
Yeah.
And that it kind of knocks it out of the air, basically.
Since Ted's might just be one of those private planes.
Yeah, it's a private jet.
Well, I've got a personal question for you as a man. So I'm glad you're on here. Now, as a man, if you had to go tinkle, would you tinkle in such an obviously public area of the road like this? I mean, in front of a billboard, right on the berm, as some people like to
No,
say,
I'd go
of
off
the
into the, I'd go
okay.
behind a tree,
That's what
man.
I'm thinking too. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
geez.
that's actually kind of funny because you could have still done the billboard, the bike, Dinah grabbing it, and then another panel of the guy running out of the woods, like
Yeah,
zipping up.
yeah.
Hey, that's my bike. So either way it works. It's
Yes.
supposed to be a funny moment, and I like the fact that she leaves a note.
Yeah. I like how she says that it will be taken care of. You can collect her tomorrow. Doesn't she say that? Maybe she doesn't. She's a beaut. You can collect her. No worry. She'll be safe.
Yeah,
But when you next see her, she's like thrown the motorcycle down in order to do.
she comes flying over the barbed wire
I
fence and then does this
know
skid across. It's a total boss
it's
action move.
it is, but I'm like, oh man, she lied about that to the guy there for sure. I can't find that particular page.
It's
Oh yeah,
page
right
12.
there.
Yeah,
Yes,
she
on the
does it.
ground.
She scores and the crowd goes crazy. And the third panel is her
Oh yeah,
looking up
too.
at between Talia's.
Yes, of course. Of course. Oh man. So yeah, we can talk about Talia. So I had thought like, oh, this is Talia al Ghul, just
Yeah,
because I guess that's me not knowing too many Talia DC characters, and I thought clearly it must be. But
that was my
would
impression.
Babs not have known that this was Talia, and why wouldn't she have said something at the press conference? Like, why is
I would imagine that if she's working for President Luther, it's public knowledge and it's been so for a while.
okay?
And I get the impression, and unfortunately I didn't read Superman at the time. I think I didn't read a lot. I've read Our Worlds at War, which is the
Oh yeah.
crossover Lex is president at that point. The only other story I remember reading with President Lex was a two-parter between detective and action, I think it was, where Batman and Lois Lane break into the White House to steal a kryptonite ring or something from, or so it's actually, I remember it being a really fun story. I have a feeling that somewhere along the line it's because he didn't seize power, he was elected president, so like legitimately elected president. So I think those in the Justice League who would be alarmed by this had to say, like, we really, our hands are tied. So you name Talia al Ghul as your chief of staff or whatever she is, and you're just kind of like, there's only so, like, we have to be aware of her, but we really can't do anything. We can't arrest her. Like, she's like, so unfortunately he's skating around the legality, these are awful people, but they get away with it because of the position.
Sure.
Which has never happened in government.
No, it hasn't. Oh, you kind of have a panty shot. I don't think I can show it, but you can kind of see the panties.
It's a garter.
But anyway, well, there's a garter, yes, but then you can see the panties. You can see it. Okay, anyway, that's fine.
Oh, yes. Yes, you can.
Jeez. I did
White
like that.
panties with black garters, though?
Yeah.
Oh,
wow. Tom. Anyways, I did like that fight scene. I don't know if I've ever seen Dinah versus Talia. I'm sure I have. Was she in that with the Ubu? That was Bane. I don't know. But I mean, those two seem pretty evenly matched, but I would also say maybe Dinah would be a bit more skilled in the martial arts.
Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know if the League of Assassins thing applies in the comics. I know it's been to movies and television with Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul, but I would imagine that she's kind of like in the 70s and 80s from what I read, she's kind of like a Bond girl.
Oh.
But like one of the Bond girls, like one of the more skillful, almost like Spy Who Loved Me type.
And we're talking about Talia, right?
Talia, yeah.
Okay.
So she's like, she's like the killer Bond girl,
Yeah.
So I would imagine that she's been working for her father for so many years. She's like, I'm not saying she's like Lady Shiva level.
Yeah.
But she's definitely up there in terms of her skills. She can probably take on somebody like Talia, but like Dinah, and they're fighting to a near standstill. They have to get really down and dirty.
They sure do.
On page 16, they're basically, she's shoving her face into the grass. I mean, that's how dirty they have to fight for somebody to get the upper hand. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, probably top five fighter, you think?
I would say she a female fighter, or fighter overall. Yeah, she's definitely in the top 5, top 10. Bless you.
Thank you.
And these two are evenly matched. Yeah, it's a good fight too.
For sure. Yes. So again, she gets to, so it's a nice, you call it a framing structure, I call it a ring composition, but the story starts off with Dinah fighting and it ends with Dinah fighting. So that works well. And we also see that Madison not only has this chaotic code is not only defensive or perhaps passive, but active as well, which I'm surprised that they're not going to kill off Talia al Ghul, but I'm just surprised that she did not die with this electrocution or whatever happened, because Atticus lost his hands, which is pretty vicious. So that was pretty interesting, but it is kind of comical to see this. It's like a Looney Tunes situation.
It is very Looney Tunes. I can hear the little blink blink noise when she's like blinking her eyes, and she's like,
maybe all the ash
she's been roasted like Dabby Duck, Yeah.
How do you?
I love the fact that Dinah just goes with her finger on the bottom of 18. She's like, "Well, you're no fun anymore." She just knocks her over.
Yeah. Oh boy. How do you feel, or how should Barbara feel? Do you feel affronted for her that she is slung over the gas tank of the motorcycle like a sack of potatoes? Any thoughts on that?
She hates it.
I bet she does.
I hear Dia like it makes for a good comedy because of all the air balloon word balloons around it. They're all fighting. It works because it's supposed to be a funny. Funny drive away. So I like that.
She says, "When I get back on my own wheels again, you are so toast." So it's probably true. I don't know when her foot was bandaged. I also wonder when she lost her shoe, but I'll believe it. But that was a fun detail. I guess she didn't have. No, that was Dinah. The final question about Barbara. Oh, and that scene just like smells of Terry Moore, and I could totally see a bunch like Casey Bean with there and Kachu.
Casey, Francine, and Kachu. Kachu's driving.
Yeah. We have to talk about Barbara's hairstyle because my chief hairstyle and clothing correspondent, Professor Allen, always likes to talk about that. Do you like her hairstyle throughout this story?
The weird barrettes that are like something out of Drew Barrymore were really bugging me. It was very true. It's like, I was like, what is this hairstyle?
So no barrettes.
Yeah, once it's they're on there for the first couple of issues, they've fallen out by the end.
Okay.
You can see one in the butt shot on the plane.
I bet.
On page 9, you can see it on her left-hand side. But I like the fact that they've fallen out of her hair by the time the issue's over, because she's been knocked around a little bit. But after that, with her hair just kind of being the way it is, it's fine.
Well, gee. No, well, at first I thought, oh my gosh, she turned into a punk rocker. At the end, she's got that black broken heart shirt, and it's up and spiked. That one doesn't seem as Barbara-y to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, put a nose ring in, and maybe she's about to go to a club and undercover. But all the other hairstyle, like the bob, is like that's kind of a classic Barbara as Oracle.
It's pulled back.
Yeah.
It's not spiky. It's pulled back, and I think it's just kind of in a. Her hair's too short for a true ponytail, so it's in kind of a pom-pom on the back of her head, which is being kind of squished by her wheelchair anyway. So, and then she's got kind of the strands going which is very comic booky. How many women in comic books have these strand of hair falling in front of the face?
90s. I was just watching
Yeah,
Scream 2, and one of the characters, I'm like, why do you have these tendrils down here? Are they not annoying to you? But I guess that was
yeah, it's
97, so I guess that's just it.
yeah, it's a time.
90s
It's
kind of
something
thing.
of the
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
for sure. Any other thoughts on this particular issue? Would you be interested? How about, sorry, I cut you off, but
Hmm.
would you be interested in seeing more of Madison? Like, does that intrigue you, that ending?
Um, a little bit, but only if Terry Moore were staying on it, because
Sure.
I can see some other writer seeing this, getting a Birds of Prey run, and all of a sudden she comes back as like,
Mm,
you know, Siren Strike with a Y, then is like killing people or something.
I see.
Like
Yeah.
I can see the sort of heel turn of like, like and a really bad costume. I mean, maybe I read
Yeah.
too many bad books in the early '90s, but like, so there are so many there are ways in which this could go really really foul
Yeah.
if somebody else picked up this thread. So the fact that it's a one and done storyline is fine.
Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts on 49 before I guess we look at the whole story and give it a rating?
No, I really just kind of flipping through it. The best part of it is the Talia Black Canary fight. They give like 3 or 4 pages to that. It's a really
Yeah,
good fight.
which I'm glad. Yeah, I would say that as well as Barbara kicking butt inside
Hmm.
of the building
Hmm.
and just like seeing her reclaim, I think, her legs and the Batgirl legacy is really
Yeah,
special.
I do like the bit with the plane and the catering cart, the flight attendant cart on the with the fire
Oh yeah.
extinguisher,
Which I think,
because
yeah, she should have known it was going to happen, but yeah,
yeah,
complete
I think she just got a little overconfident there, didn't realize how high up off the ground the plane's wing was, because she
yeah,
goes tippy tumbles over, and I'm amazed she doesn't have a concussion. It's
for
like, how
sure.
are you
Yeah.
conscious?
Yeah.
How
And
didn't you
that,
just go smack against the pavement and just I'm out.
yeah, that probably would have been where she lost her shoe. So I don't know where she lost it, but she has both shoes on there. And there was this, I hesitate to call it a game, but at governor's school, which I went to during high school, I went part-time to governor's school, which was science and
Mhm.
mathematics, and then came over to my home school for the social sciences. There was this program called Vector Jockey, and it was all about, it did not make sense until you were in physics, but you had this like little plane, and well, really it was like a spaceship and only a certain amount of fuel, and you had to get some places by using vectors, because you of course are in space, so you're like using the propulsion to help you. But that's what it reminded me of, using that
Mhm.
propulsion to push it backwards. Well, out of 10, I guess your final thoughts, and then out of 10, what chaotic codes do you want to do? Chaotic codes.
Sure.
How would you rate 47, 48, and 49 as a
Oh,
whole story?
as a whole story,
Indeed.
um, this is pretty high because I'd say I'd say a 9, because
Oh,
honestly,
okay.
I don't know if like in the greater context of Birds of Prey, if this matches up with everything else
Mm,
as a standalone. So that's why I'm kind of knocking it down a point, because I'm not as up on my. This is honestly, I think these are the first 3 issues I've ever read, unless it ever crossed over with a Batman book at one point in the '90s. So I'm like, okay, so maybe it might not be the best representation, so I'm kind of holding that point. But as a 3 issue story arc,
yeah.
like I said, this is a really tight. It reminds me of a really tight, fun hour of an action adventure television show from around this time, and it's like Alias or something. And
Yeah.
that's why I really really liked it.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I think, I still have some potential questions about the chaotic code and Barbara and everything.
Yeah.
I would probably give this an 8.5, but it carries on the tone I think that Chuck Dixon had set out with Birds of Prey, that there are some lighthearted moments as well, but then there are some, it could be a serious story as well. I'm sad that Barbara and Dinah are really separated on this mission until the end that they come together, but I think that also makes it a unique story and that they have been for several issues, several arcs, they've been pretty close in contact with one another. So this is like,
Mhm,
oh, what's it like when they're actually on the same mission, but they're separated
mhm.
and don't know that they're on the same mission. So I think there are some unique things. And Terry, I think, captures the spirit of Birds of Prey. So 8.5 out of 10 chaotic codes. Okay, so before we take a break, I just have 2 listener emails that came to me. The first is from Shayna. Now, Shayna used a swears word, so I shall say the swears word, but it shall be bleeped in the podcast. Okay, so Tom, don't be alarmed. Okay, so hi, Stella. I just want to email and say thank you for all the work you put into Batgirl the Oracle. I recently discovered your podcast this last year and pretty much lost my shit knowing that there was such a high quality, I know, consistent podcast focused on my favorite comic book character. I've listened to many of your past episodes and I've enjoyed following you in real time. Your love for Barbara Gordon, your choice in guests, and interview skills. Look, Tom, she's praising you. All make for such an amazing listening experience. I'm a huge fan of podcasts and talk radio, also Latin and the classics, and you really have created something I enjoy from multiple angles. It might not mean much coming from a stranger on the internet, but your podcast has meant so much to me as it has provided so much entertainment and joy for me over the last year. Thank you. I can't wait for you to get to Gail Simone's Birds of Prey run. I am a huge fan of both her BOP run and her Batgirl run, and so I'm very curious to hear your opinions. And I am excited to follow along with Batgirls in real time with you. Thank you again. And I hope you have a great start to your new year. All the best, Shayna. And I have to say that I told Shayna, I emailed her back thanking her for that, which I really mean. I'm glad. I mean, my hope, of course, is that my podcast, entertains, brings joy, brings escapism and teaching as well. But I probably should just be best friends with that person if she, got the Batgirl, you've got the Latin, got the classics. That's best friends right there. So, anyways, thank you so much for writing to me, Shanna. And then we've got Ian Prime, aka Ian Miller. He says, Dear Stella and Carolyn knows, very sorry to hear about Carolyn's health issues and hope that things improve. I greatly enjoyed the retrospective on the Birds of Prey by Dixon Run ending, the examination of the old and new issues, particularly Batgirls. I'm very glad that it got some high cup nudes ratings from you. I also quite enjoyed it and am looking forward to the next issue eagerly. Ian. So there you go. Yeah, and we'll see what issue number 2 has to offer. I ask Mr. Dixon if he will come back on so I can talk about his run as a whole now that we're done. And also when Shag was on there, I don't know if you've listened to that, but Shag was bringing up some good points of like that was a weird arc or story for Chuck to end on. So what was going on with
Mm.
that? Did he leave of his own accord or not? So I'll have to get him back on here. But
Who was writing Nightwing around this time? Was it still him or was it Devin Grayson yet?
it's Devin now.
It was Devin. So maybe
Yeah.
I think there was a period where he was not writing for DC at all. And this might have been the beginning of it. So I don't know what happened. I don't know
Okay.
if he left of his own volition or if he just kind of was shown the door if they were like cleaning house at DC at the time or something.
What a person to try to clean house of, though. Chuck
Yeah, I don't
Dixon
know.
of
Well,
all people.
I'm not sure because I'm trying to remember what the timing was, especially since editorial changed hands over the course of the few years that you're covering right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know
Not that
if it was just
I'm not criticizing you for that idea. I'm just saying, like, if that's true, Chuck Dixon of all people to be
yeah,
like, hey, we're
I
gonna get
don't
rid of you. That'd be
yeah, I
crazy.
don't know. So I don't know. I don't know if it was contract was up or what,
Yeah.
So but yeah, it does seem
Hopefully I'll
like this
find out.
dovetails him leaving Birds of Prey dovetails with him possibly leaving the other books he
Yeah.
was writing.
Nightwing. So
So
okay. Well, Tom and I are going to take a break. And then when we come back, we will cover one modern quickie, which is Nightwing, and then a full review of Batgirls number 2. But first, we have Zaius's Radio Hour featuring Locking Up the Sun by Poets of the Fall. See you soon.